Welcome, patrons! It's about time for another theory video, so let's have a chat about Fenris and Vallaslin. The theory. Ancient Vallaslin had more of a purpose than just marking the Danarius' people. It once helped enhance and perhaps even control their slaves, and a replica version can be seen on Fenris. The evidence. Where willows wail. Remember the poem that Sarah begins to recite when sitting on the roof with her? It's a Ferelden lullaby that has its roots in ancient Elven. World of Thedas Volume 2 gives us the original Elven version and its translation. It's noted that in the entry that this is a very rough translation, but it goes something like this. We/it lost eternity or the ruined tree of the people. Time won't help when the land of dreams is no longer our journey. We try to lead despite the eventual failings of our markings, to the inevitable and troubling freedom we are committed. When we can no longer believe, we lost glory to war. When the wolf failed/won, we lost the people to war. So let's backtrack to that third line. The entry also helpfully adds the original Elven, which reads, Ir savir tisuladin varbana Vallaslin. So the poem is definitely talking about the Vallaslin, but how did they fail? The poem suggests that this is the Vale's doing, but let's focus on what failed. If the Vallaslin were only made for marking slaves as one of the Danarius' people, then there is no way to fail in that, so we can assume that there is another purpose for the Vallaslin. Tevinter's relationship with the Elven. Now this is more guesswork than solid proof, but much of Tevinter is said to be based on Elven society. We aren't completely sure how Danarius came to the idea of Fenris' markings, but we do know that he found an ancient treatise that described a process of embedding lyrium beneath the skin, and those with the markings would have great abilities. Whatever this treatise was, it was described as being incomplete, so much of what he did was reconstructed from that document. From this, it's entirely possible that Danarius came across descriptions of Vallaslin applications and then adapted it to his desires. On a separate note, the design of Fenris' markings are also similar to Vallaslin, notably his neck piece matching that of Juné's. Lyrium. Now if the ancient elves did brand their slaves with lyrium, you would probably need a ton of lyrium. Perhaps even a lyrium processing center, like the one we found in Trespasser? Even though you see an ancient elven lyrium processing center in the game, they don't actually say what it was used for, so this is perhaps one of the guesses we could use. Blood. Why do we call Vallaslin blood writing anyway? In a dialogue between Merrill and Fenris, she tells him that Vallaslin probably uses the blood of the elf that is getting the Vallaslin. I had trouble actually capturing that dialogue, so I'll just read it out loud. Why are you watching me like that? You have Vallaslin, the same markings that the Dalish have. Yours are not made of lyrium. No, they're made of blood. Our blood. That's what Vallaslin means. Blood writing. It's a mark of adulthood. Mine were carved into my flesh against my will, and a ritual I only remember for the agony it caused me. I'm so sorry. Okay. If blood is a needed component in the application process, then perhaps substituting lyrium wouldn't be that hard to do. Or, as we now know that lyrium is the blood of the Titans, perhaps the original meaning behind blood writing was the blood of the Titans and not blood of the elves getting the Vallaslin. The rebuttal. Powerful slaves. Now the best question to ask for all this is, why the hell would you give your slaves more power? Although Fenris' markings could be different from ancient markings, giving a slave the ability to pass through objects seems like a really bad idea from the point of the master. And sure enough, Fenris does kill Danarius. Perhaps an argument can be made that there was a way to control the slave by using the Vallaslin, or perhaps, like Fenris, whose memories were forgotten because of the pain of the ritual, the slaves were then brainwashed. But as we have no answers to any of these questions, it's still a big hole in the theory. No mention of it. There are no mentions about modern Vallaslin being different from ancient ones, which is something that you would think would come up by Solus or even the elves in the Temple of Mythal. In fact, Abelis calls the elven people a shadow, but still calls their markings Vallaslin. Translation differences. Let's go back to that elven poem and its third line, Ir savir tisuladin varbanan Vallaslin. So given our limited knowledge of the elven language in the series, the best translation we can make using these words is actually this. Ir, meaning I am, sa, 1/1 more, vir, way/we, te, which is unknown, possibly form of tell, which is not, suladin, which is finding strength in loss or pain, var, meaning are, bana, again unknown, perhaps from banal, meaning nothing or never, and Vallaslin, which is blood writing. So you can see on the screen the different ways this can be translated, but my personal interpretation of this is I am one, not finding strength in loss, or blood writing is nothing. So to me, this says more that the writer of the poem is no longer connected to something and is struggling with it, and that their blood writing means nothing, which would actually fit much better into our current knowledge of Vallaslin after the downfall of the Elven Empire, not that the Vallaslin had a power that is now lost. So it should be noted that in the entry for this poem, it's mentioned that the modern Dalish is different from ancient Elven. So perhaps the words that we know in the Elven language are the modern Dalish dialect, and the translation in the Codex is the ancient dialect, which is why we have a difference here. And that, honored patrons, is what we know of this theory. Do you still have lingering questions, proofs that I'm wrong, comments about your own fan theory? Feel free to tweet me at @Gilderthalon on Twitter or send a PM to user Gillenon on Reddit. The rest you're all.